Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser, and it is Saturday, which means we get to spend a little time with good friend Jeff Simmons up there in north of the border, Canada. Jeff, what do you got going on for your weekend this weekend?
I'm going to hang out with the family mostly. My parents have a pool in their backyard. We're bringing my son, I think, into the pool for the first time today.
Ooh.
So we got on like a floaty device, and I used to play a lot of golf on the weekends. So I saved that for the weekdays, but I had one of the more privileged complaints I've ever had in my life yesterday.
Mm.
So does anything like I don't know if you take this as bad as I do, but slow golf
Ugh.
is like my biggest pet peeve in the world. We left after 9 holes yesterday. It was that slow. So I feel like so privileged complaining about that. And my dad doesn't understand this at all when we play. But like it took us like 2:30 ish to play 9 holes yesterday because of how
Oh,
packed. And
yeah,
so it was so humid out. Me and my buddy left after
yeah,
9. And
yeah.
so I don't like complaining about that publicly. I sound like a baby.
Whatever, dude. I
I
mean,
hate it. It's the worst.
you can play whatever you want. And look, I think the only thing worse than slow golf is slow golf when you're playing poorly.
Yes.
I just that's just nuclear fuel for me. I can't handle it. I'm gone. No reason to be that upset. So you know, I don't mind. You can be a bad golfer, but just don't be a slow golfer. Yeah.
Yeah. And people take it. People were playing from the Blues yesterday that just shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that drives me crazy because everyone watches golf on TV and they watch everyone putt out slowly and they're like, I want to play in the blues because it's fun and the poles are longer. And just watch them hit like 7 yard drives. Oh, that gets me.
Well, I've got to ask you about something else, Canada related. So before we get to, I'll tell people what's coming up, and then I'll ask you this question. So we have a really fun show. We're going to be going over. We did the offense where we compared the 2024 Seahawks offense to the 2025 Seahawks offense, and kind of made evaluations at each position group, whether they're better or worse, and whether the overall offense is better or worse. You can go back and find that episode if you like. It's a former Seahawks Saturday, and that's one worth watching. Today we're going to do that with the defense. And at first blush, you'd kind of think, well, it's pretty much the same guys. So is it better or worse? I don't know the answer. Like I think we're going to find some things that might not be obvious as we go through it. So looking forward to kind of comparing where the Seahawks were defensively, personnel wise, at this point to where they were at this point last year. So we'll do that. Also have a couple ESPN articles I want to react to with you, and I have a feeling Jeff's going to get annoyed, which I'm looking forward to. But so we'll do that. But before we get there, so there's been a lot of Toronto Blue Jay fans that have been upset about the All-Star game, and they've been like talking smack about Cal Raleigh, that Aaron Judge is clearly better. And then they were talking trash about Julio Rodriguez making the All-Star game, George Springer not making it. And not only that, Jeff, but then Julio Rodriguez bowed out of the All-Star game, and another Mariner outfielder, Randy Rosarina, got picked instead of George Springer to replace him. So uh, where are you on this whole thing?
So I'm probably like the worst Blue Jay fan to ask this question to because anyone who followed me like on any of my social knew how much I hated what the Blue Jays have done like for like 2.5 years. And I was just expecting like the worst season from them. And they started the year at the end of May, they were like under 500. It was exactly what I thought. And then all of a sudden they're playing incredible. I don't think I pride on my balanced sport. I don't think I've ever been more. I think they've gone very lucky. Like if you look at their, and so I'm not in this camp of like hating on other teams. I'm still struggling based on like the spite I have for the organization and the front office that I haven't really got to enjoy this season. And there's a guy I talk to on Twitter all the time, BK. He's like the biggest Jays like flag waver. And when he was saying all year they're going to be good, I was kind of laughing at him. And I'm still like my spiteful side is almost still. I haven't been able to enjoy the season as much as I should have because I find Jays fans, a lot of them, the ones online, very annoying. There's like some very annoying Blue Jays fans. So growing up like 10 years ago, I probably would have been in the camp of the annoying Blue Jay fan. I'm kind of a self-hating Blue Jay fan right now, so I can't relate to a lot of these guys. And I actually kind of have a soft spot for the Mariners because I feel bad about how like annoying their offense has been, and most of my social following at this point is just Seattle sports. And so Springer has had an incredible season. I will say that Springer looked cooked. Like that looked like a horrible signing that was just getting worse. And for him at age 35 to come out of nowhere, it makes no sense. Defies all like logic and how people age and aging curves. And he's been rightfully so. He's been incredible. He definitely deserves it over. But like, I can definitely relate to a lot of these Mariners fans. There's a couple Jays guys, and I find them incredibly painful. It's almost fun to cheer against them. And so I'm still conflicted with the season, and it's the worst part of me because I really should be enjoying it. They're playing way beyond expectations.
Well, I'm just looking forward to the point where the Jays manager admits that he was wrong about Cal Raleigh one of these times.
That's the thing. The Jays are very arrogant, and they like Cal Raleigh is now, what do they have, 38 home runs?
Yeah, 38 home runs.
I don't know. I find it very hard. Like when I was a kid, I found the Jays were kind of these like quiet team no one talked about. They were kind of fun even when they sucked. And now there's this fan base that's like defiant, and I don't know. I find it hard to relate to them. I'm guessing some Seahawks fans might find it similar because of how out there Seahawks Twitter is, but Jays Twitter is like a group I've never been able to relate with. I think they're weird. I don't think they're like funny and quirky like the Seahawks Twitter is. So I'm probably out on an island here. So I am a Jays fan. I'm not outwardly cheering for them because I don't like the organization right now. I don't like a lot of the players. But so if you want to complain about Jays fans, honestly, you can come to me.
All right. Well, I know everyone in chat's hoping that we continue to talk about golf and baseball, but we're going to change gears. We're not going to listen to you. We're going to change gears. There were a couple articles that came out on ESPN, and I found them both to be kind of interesting. One was the off-season grades, and the other is an ongoing series that Jeremy Fowler is doing about top 10 at various positions. And we're going to spend just a few minutes on the off-season grade one. But, they give the Rams an A, the 49ers an A-, the Cardinals an A-, and they give the Seahawks a B-. So what do you make of that?
So when I first opened the article before you sent it to me this morning, I saw it yesterday. And the first thing I saw was Rams A, and I already started stewing. And I saw someone, I think it was Greg Rosenthal and Jordan Rodriguez, who used to be their beat writer, just got promoted. They had the Rams as one of the 5 winners of the offseason. I was like, what did I miss? All they did was replace one old receiver with a potentially slightly better one. Like they didn't really have much of a draft. I know maybe the whole keeping Stafford at a good contract is probably what's factored in, but I feel like I'm missing something. I feel like there's just this love for McVay and the Rams. And when I read the article yesterday and I see the first 3 teams are NFC West teams, and by the time I was so mad, I shut the thing down. I turned off the page. And then you sent it to me again this morning, and I'm like, all right, you know what? I'll read it. And I've read so many of these like Ringer offseason rankings, and I know the writer Seth Walder is like a pure analytics guy. I disagree with him a lot, but he's at least consistent in his criteria. And so actually I was pleasantly surprised based on what I was expecting. I thought Seattle was a B-, and I thought his analysis was pretty fair. But I don't know, like to me, so much of the offseason has to do with the draft, and what really elevates a team's floor and ceiling is the draft. And by all objective measures, the Seahawks had one of the 3 best drafts in the league. Mm-hmm. And so for them to have the worst offseason in the NFL, and look,
in the NFC West.
Sorry. In the NFC West. Sorry, yeah, not in the NFL. But that to me just doesn't make sense because, look, I know there are some people have Geno as a top 10 quarterback, and Darnold with this offensive line is not good. And if you want to criticize them for that, I'm totally with you. But what did San Francisco do? They lost like their entire team. To have them as an A- or an A, a lot of people did not like their draft. I know Trevor Sikkema, who's a draft guy for PFF, and you can agree or disagree with him. He had them as the worst draft in the NFL this year. And that's a little much for me, but how is San Francisco like a grade and a half higher than Seattle from the offseason? I get if you're talking about like their blue chip players or something, but to me, that's where the thing just loses credibility. And look, if you want to criticize the Seattle quarterback thing, I get it. Like I can live with any of that criticism. I think the Ringer guys took it a little far and they missed the context, if we're being honest. But to me, I don't understand that analysis when Seattle's draft to me was outstanding and what they could have done and what they executed. I
Yeah,
struggle with this.
I I think the Rams did a nice job this offseason in a few places. I think the Puna Ford signing was a really hand in glove fit for what they need. As a team that would love to have added a nose tackle and did not, that was a good signing for a team that really needs that. And the Devontae Adams thing, to me that's like fine. I don't think that's nearly
Yeah.
as brilliant as everyone wants to make it out to be. That's, I think, a lot of reputation over actual production the last few years. And then the trade that they made with Atlanta.
Okay. You know
so
what?
like
I did not account for that. That was an excellent move.
so I think that's reasonable to say that all those moves together to me are like a B. Like it's a good offseason. There's nothing like, whoa. Like, I mean, the trade that they made was really good. But honestly, they traded a first round pick this year for a first round pick next year, essentially. And we'll find out if that ends up being the right decision or not. Don't know. So I didn't see that being the only A of any offseason in the entire NFL.
Yeah.
Like there's no other team that had a better offseason than the Rams. That is ridiculous to me. The 49ers at A-. 49ers are a worse football team than they were at this time last year.
I think pretty significantly.
Like no question about it. There's some young players that they've added that maybe will work out. I think I've been very complimentary of the Bryce Huff move. I think that was a great move for them. I don't get how they get an A-, like the second highest graded. And the Cardinals, of the three, I would give the Cardinals like an A-. I think that's a fair grade for them. I think they did a really good job on the defensive line with their adding of veterans. I think the signing of Josh Sweat made a lot of sense. They were the right team to give him money. I think their draft has the potential to be really good if Will Johnson ends up being healthy enough to be good. And so I like a lot of what the Cardinals did. And I think you can point to them making a pretty meaningful step forward talent-wise if these things work out. I don't see the big step forward from the Rams or the 49ers. Like the biggest step forward between those two teams that I could point to would be the Rams run defense if Puna Ford works out.
They had Bobby Brown last year, who they lost to, was a really good player.
Yeah.
So
he was a good player.
Going from Bobby Brown to Puna, that big of an upgrade? I think Bobby Brown got more money.
I think he did. I'll have to look at that. You might be right. But like, it boggles my mind a little bit. The Seahawks being B-, I can kind of wrap my head around. You could say that they got worse at two important positions.
Yeah.
And I think that's like hard to go above a B- with that.
Yeah, it's the way they potentially got. Again, it all depends on your perspective at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
To me, if you say, "Hey, we turned Geno into Darnold and Milrow," some people are going to say that was amazing. Like Rob Staten would say that was ideal, and some people are going to say that was a disaster. So it all depends on your perspective. Wide receiver, I think, is objectively worse. But they got better at tight end potentially. Maybe that neutralizes it. But for me, I think the story that gets lost with the Seahawks, and I heard Brett Coleman sort of talking about, I think what they did for their infrastructure on offense neutralizes a lot of the player moves. And I think that could really just have a lot better moves than just getting better or worse at wide receiver. And so that obviously the Clint Kubiak thing is a big question mark. But that whole staff, Seattle's infrastructure last year, and Geno made a lot of it work. It could have been really bad with if you played Howell, for example, last year. I think just putting in a competent infrastructure is going to have a huge difference on just how they can connect the team. Like they won 10 games last year with one of the worst offensive lines from pass protection standpoint. And they didn't do much personnel-wise up front, but again, I think this infrastructure really is going to make a big difference.
This is going to sound crazy to some, but if I was to say, if you could judge the offseason by which team in the NFC West improved the most, like has the chance to take the biggest step forward, I would probably give the Cardinals the nod for the biggest potential step forward because of the floor that they added with veterans and then also some rookies that have, I think, decently high ceiling. So that's like, I think they're best positioned to take a step forward. The Seahawks for me are second. Like the Seahawks draft class was the best of any in the division and one of the best in the NFL. Might end up being the best in the NFL. I think those guys are going to come in and play and contribute right away. And so I don't know, man. I just don't know how you can make the case that the 49ers and Rams had better off seasons than the Seahawks. If you're looking at which teams improved the most, I just don't see it with the Rams.
Yeah, and to show like me and you are not being just haters and anything, like I think me and you more so than a lot of the national media last year were very critical of the Cardinals draft. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the league, or it felt like the Field Yateses and Matt Millers and those guys were all like, the Cardinals got 7 of my top 90 ranked players. They did such a good job. And me and you were like, they kind of blew the draft. And they still, but the biggest issue with Arizona last year was defensively, they did a really good job scheming. And John Gannon and their DC, he's a really young guy, have really done a nice job. Because when you looked at their depth chart on our lads last year, I sent to you guys a couple times, it was horrendous. Mm-hmm. And so the consensus now is if you give them actual talent, they might be pretty good on defense. And they've done a really good job adding talent when you consider Calais Campbell, even just Dalvin Tomlinson, Josh Sweat, and Walter Nolan, and Will Johnson. Like talent-wise, that's way better. So if they can combine like the scheming advantages they've had with better talent, I do agree with you. I think I would have no problem if it was Arizona, but like
go on, finish your thought. Sorry.
No, I was going to say with Seattle, like me and you ran so many scenarios. Me, you, and Nathan ran so many scenarios. I think Nathan said this on day 2 of our show. But if we did a mock scenario where they got Zabel and Eamon Mori, we would have just discounted it. We would have said that's not realistic.
Exactly.
And I'm the guy always in these scenarios being like, this is stupid. We're not going to get that. We do mock draft madness and mock draft starting. There wasn't one scenario where we got that.
No.
So how is that not a great offseason if we got a
and Arroyo and Milrow? Like,
yeah,
I mean,
if we did that scenario, I think all of us would have been like, these simulators are stupid.
Yes.
So how is that not a great offseason?
Yeah. I think you and I put a lot of weight on the draft more than apparently Seth Walder does. And to that point, I mean, one of the things, the last thing I'll say on this, then we'll move on to the top 10 lists. So I liked the Minnesota Vikings offseason. I thought that they did a lot of smart things, and he gives them a C+. And one of the things that he criticized about the Seahawks is that they didn't sign a veteran guard in free agency, which I agree with. So I'm not going to argue that. But then you look at his criticism of the Vikings. He writes, Will Fries is a promising guard, but handing him a 5-year deal that averages $17.5 million with $44 million fully guaranteed seems incredibly rich for a player who has recorded average pass block win rates in each of the last 2 seasons. Several guards signed for $10 million per year or less. And so he just didn't like the money, the price. But anyway, I just wanted to get a little blood flowing for you on that one. Speaking of blood flowing, so Jeremy Fowler has done this thing where he's talks to scouts, GMs, coaches, and gets the top 10 players at various positions. And today they released interior offensive line. Oh. And I know the one that probably got you was the number 1 ranked interior offensive lineman in the NFL, which was
Creed Humphrey.
Yes. The one that got me was the number 6 interior defensive line in the interior offensive lineman in the NFL, Joe Tooney. Everyone talks about the Will Fries or some of these, like that was the move of the offseason that hurt me the most. Not only did the Bears get a veteran guard, they got one of the best veteran guards, and they got him for like a 2026 fourth round pick. That one really still stings.
Yeah, that hurt. That is hurt because what makes that one worse is that Seattle cleared all this cap room, and I don't think they were planning on clearing the cap room with DK and Gino. I think those were allocated to them, but they end up clearing all this cap room that still really hasn't fully been used because Fries didn't happen. This didn't happen. They still have sort of like they have what 32 million in cap room. I think a lot of that was allocated to a guard, and the fact that they could have easily taken on that contract, and they've already extended him, and he went for nothing. So that one from like the move that would have made their offseason great, I think is that right. But I will say the one thing that I can't crush them on is when Ryan Poles talked about this later, he was like, we just called them. They were surprised anyone wanted them, and we just did a deal. Like they weren't shopping them. Ryan Poles used to work with Brett Veach. He was his assistant GM. I wonder if there was an inside kind of job there. And sometimes it's like they don't shop players to 32 teams. And I always talk about this is Jamal Adams. If the Seahawks shopped that price point to 32 teams, 31 teams, they would have got such a better player. But sometimes deals just happen. You call a guy, you're like, you know what, that sounds good. Deal. We were trying to sign Trey Smith, but again, you could criticize Schneider. Why haven't he always talks about he's in on everything and why haven't done this? I don't think that's fair in this case. I think this was just a deal that happened between two old buddies. And yes, I'm with you. If there's a deal that would have just pushed this offseason from potentially good to great, that's the deal. You push Zabel to right guard. All of a sudden, you've upgraded two spots massively, and you kind of did what the Bears did at left guard and center. Yeah. It's a punch to the gut. Absolutely.
That one hurts. So no surprise, there was no Seahawks that even received a vote on interior offensive line, nor would I expect them to. Running through a couple of these other ones, running backs was the first one he did. The only player in the NFC West that ended up on the list was Christian McCaffrey at 5. And we'll see. And then they even honorable mention, like James Conner made like the last of the honorable mentions. I think that sells James Conner a little bit short.
Yeah.
Like I think like Joe Mixon above James Conner, even Alvin Kamara, I'm not sure at this point in his career I'd have over James Conner. But like, okay, Kyron Williams, Kenneth Walker got votes, but that's it. Didn't really get to honorable mention. A couple places where Seahawks did show up. I was waiting. I wanted to see the safeties one, and I was waiting to be angry.
Me too.
And I'm scrolling through, and Kyle Hamilton's 1, Brian Branch is 2, Xavier McKinney. I'm like, okay, there are some really good safeties. I can't argue. Jesse Bates, Kirby Joseph, Derwin James. I'm like, okay, I can't argue so far. Antoine Winfield, Buda Baker, can't argue. Minka Fitzpatrick, okay. And then there's the name. Julian Love shows up at number 10. And I kind of breathed this sigh of relief because he deserves to be on this list.
That's funny. I had the same reaction. I was like, okay, I'm ready to be angry. Like, there's no way they're going to call out Julian Love. And then I'm going name by name. I'm like, you know what? This is surprisingly fair. Yeah. And I got there and like my eyes popped out of my head. And I was just like, wow, like people are seeing what we're seeing because I think where they had him, I think it was the 10th safety. Was that right?
Yes, the 10th safety.
I think that's right. And he played so well last year. And McDonald's system has really elevated the safety position. And when the Seahawks signed him under Pete Carroll, he was like the third safety, they had those two old, they had Adams and Diggs still at that point. He was like a luxury addition. And the first move they made after McDonald being brought on board to really extend a player was Julian Love. And he looked like a top 10 safety to me. And so I was really surprised to see, and even the write-up they got was just like how smart he was and that he was a cornerback in college that's really developed. He was so heady and so good at tackle. There was games where he was the best player on the field last year. And the first year, he had some really rough spots. The first year with Pete, he had a really rough game in Detroit, and I think a season opener last year. And then he really came on, and there was a lot of debate last year about him when they moved on from Quandre Diggs, who's, not to be mean, he's out of the league now coming off an injury. Like, what a transition that's been, getting way younger. And that's where a lot of people get hooked on what guys have done, not what they're projecting forward. And Love is probably the best example of them projecting forward. And he played like a top 10 safety. I did not expect to see that. And so you got to give Jeremy credit. You got to give the league credit for seeing what me and you have talked about for a year and a half now.
Well, and like you said, he was a bonus signing. They
Yeah,
weren't
they weren't.
planning they were surprised that he was still available on the market, and they were able to get him at a pretty affordable price. And man, the guy's not only produced on the field, he's become a leader off the field. He's one of the spokespeople for that locker room. And what they wrote, in case anyone's curious, is Love has used his 2-year stint in Seattle to catapult his career, racking up 7 interceptions, 22 pass deflections, a bunch of tackles. His 21.8% ball hawking rate topped all safeties with at least 50 targets last year. He's developed into a high-end player, and NFC executive said, remarkable for a guy who was primarily a corner in college. So that was cool. And then defensive tackles. No surprise there that there was another guy. Number 1, Dexter Lawrence. Number 2, Chris Jones. Number 3, hurts a little, Jalen Carter.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4, you're on the list, Jeff. Jeffrey Simmons of the Titans. It's hard to believe he's still only 27. I thought he was older.
It's been a league for a while.
Yeah. Quinnen Williams for the Jets is number 5. I think Leonard Williams should have been above Quinnen Williams based off of how he played last year. But he's ahead of Nnamdi Madubuike, ahead of DeForest Buckner, ahead of Vita Vea, ahead of Cam Hayward. He's ahead of some pretty good players. What did you think about this?
I think considering how he played last year, again, I was pleasantly surprised. He's been overlooked on so much stuff. The fact that he wasn't a Pro Bowler last year was perplexing. To me, I thought he played a level that was Defensive Player of the Year quality.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect him to win, but I think he played at that level where it was kind of a down year last year for I can't remember who won the award, but he played at a level and he just hadn't got any recognition to the point where I'm just like, well, he's going to get screwed again. But do you know what really jumped out at me? Do you have the article in front of you?
Yeah.
The highest grade he got was second. Did you see that?
Yes.
That jumped out at me. Like someone had him as the second defensive tackle in the whole league. And the quotes were pretty cool. It's like, this guy's been talented his whole career. McDonald finally put it together for him. And again, this was such a controversial player. And when they trade for him, we all hated the price. And all of a sudden, a couple of years later, at $21 million, it's a bargain. I remember I had a buddy last year who's a radio host out here. He hates the Seahawks, but he cheers for them, and he's so frustrated. He's like, I can't believe we traded a second for Leonard Williams when Hassan Reddick was available for a third. It's like you look at that take a year later, and you're like, oh my god, like Leonard Williams is like an All-Pro. Hassan Reddick's on like 1-year deal, so that move is another good where they bought low and it's really paid off. And yeah, it was cool to see because again, I was expecting to be mad about Leonard Williams. He's just been overlooked so much. He was freaking awesome last year. And we saw what McDonald did with Madubuike in Baltimore. And to have that guy, and now we're hoping another defensive tackle ends up on the list next year. I don't think he warranted a vote based on how he was used last year, but that would really make this team special.
Yeah, definitely would love to see Byron Murphy start climbing at least this list this season. By the way, Julian Love had as high as a 5th overall in safeties ranking. You mentioned Leonard Williams at 2. A couple quotes here that you referred to, I'll say, and then we'll switch gears here. He says, his play finally, this is about Leonard Williams, his play finally matched his abilities last season. A veteran NFL coach said he was dominant. Others have been better than him in previous year, but he always had a high ceiling. The other quote, has rare length, range, and power, an NFL coordinator said, was nice to see him put it all together. It's cool. It was cool. So I'm going to see if I can get Mr. Fowler on the show. We'll see. I know he's pretty busy, but it would be fun to do that. And it's interesting stuff there from ESPN during this time of year.
Yeah, I heard Brady Henderson on the radio this week. Whenever Brady's on, I try to listen because he always like drops a few nuggets casually. And Stacy was the host, and she brought up the top 100 list, and Brady got angry. I've never heard him get angry before. And he was talking about how stupid the voting is on the top 100 list. He's like, they just like hand a card out like it's like a customer service vote. You only vote for 20 people, and they make it like this elaborate thing, and the players don't even care. And then he was like, the one thing you actually should look at is Jeremy Fowler's list. Like he knows what's involved with that. And to see Julian Love in there and to see, I think it adds credence to what Brady was saying. Like, people are doing their homework. He's talking to the right people. It's not like this, like any list that has Leonard Williams like the 98th player in the league or something is like ridiculous. So yeah, I take that list from Fowler pretty seriously if Brady's giving it the stamp of approval.
Yeah, fun stuff. So with that in mind, let's transition to our main topic today, which is comparing the Seahawks 2025 defense at this time of the year to the Seahawks 2024 defense at this time of the year, which gets us back to July of 2024. Jeff, would you like to know who was on the top of the depth chart this time last year for the Seahawks on defense?
Sure.
All right. We'll start with the defensive line. It was Leonard Williams, the aforementioned, Jaron Reed, and Draymond Jones were the three defensive linemen. Boye Mafe and Uchenna Nwosu were listed as the starting edge rushers. You had Tyrell Dodson and Jerome Baker as your inside linebackers. Your cornerbacks at this time of the year, at least by this depth chart, starters were Michael Jackson, Reek Woolen, and Devin Witherspoon. And then you had at safety, Rayshawn Jenkins and Julian Love. All right. Anything jump out to you going through last year's crew?
Yeah, just how many little tweaks they made already just since 2024. You got to give them credit. We talked about this. There was a bit of a disconnect, it felt, that whole offseason last year and the coaches have talked about this, the alignment in the building. We've seen other people criticize some of the way Grubb has done some of the disconnect they had last year, like Christian Haynes, for example. And we can talk about that in a different show. But you can see now that the organization is far more aligned and how much more clarity is in what they're looking for at certain spots. Just to see the amount of tweaks they've made just from even just hearing some of those names over 1 year, it's pretty striking.
Should we be doing the better or worse for this version, like basically a year ago, apples to apples, knowing that changes can happen? Or should we be doing it based off of where they ended last year? What do you think is the better?
It's probably more relevant where they ended.
Okay.
It's like Michael Jackson was traded when,
during end of camp.
Who was the starter before Job took over? Who was the third corner?
It was Trey Brown.
It was Trey Brown, yes. Okay, so why don't we do it where they ended the season? I think that's more relevant here.
All right, so let's do that. Where they ended last season. Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Jaron Reed, Derek Hall and Boye Mafe at edge, Ernest Jones, Tyrese Knight at linebacker, Josh Jobe, Reek Woolen, Devin Witherspoon at corner, Julian Love, and Kobe Bryant at safety. Those are the starters. But I think what we want to do in this series that we've done is we want to talk about, like, are they, position group by position group, do we think they're better or worse? So let's start with defensive tackles, okay? And that include defensive ends, which are in a 3-down still defensive tackles. So that group last year was Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Jaron Reed as the starters, Roy Robertson Harris, Jonathan Hankins, Mike Morris as the backups. This year, at least at this point, we don't know where the actual depth chart will fall. This year, it's the same 3 starters. Then you've got some question marks behind. Jonathan Hankins is still there. Mike Morris is still there. But I think you've got a question about whether Riley Mills is going to play for the Seahawks this year. Mm-hmm. And if he does, when and how he'll be. And then you've got Brandon Peely and Quentin Bohanna, who are going to be battling at nose tackle, potentially with Jonathan Hankins. I think that's probably the guys I would mention there. So how do you kind of evaluate better or worse here? Is it just the players? Is it the evolution of a young player like Byron Murphy? How do you decide whether you think the Seahawks are better or worse at the defensive tackle room than they were last year?
Yeah, this is a tricky one because there's a lot of projection involved. Murphy's ascension is such a big story for their team this year. Year 1 to year 2 jumps happen a lot, but we have nothing to project that on. We don't even know the role he's going to play because they still have Leonard Williams. You also have Leonard Williams had the best year of his career. Can you repeat that? Can you do that again? He's a year older. He's still really good. Jaron Reed also, older player, re-signed, but he had a really good year last year. And then behind him, so you're pulling out Robertson Harris, who did a pretty good job closing out
Mm-hmm.
the defense.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a lot of question marks. Jonathan Hankins, we saw, was a diminished player by the end. He played too many snaps early in the year with the injuries, and he just wasn't as nearly as effective as he was with Dirty in Dallas. I think they only brought him back based on the draft falling away from them rather than by choice. And then it's a lot of questions. Is Brandon Peely going to play? Um, will Mike Morris look like an NFL player? It's a really tricky one because you balance out Murphy getting better and some of the other guys maybe dropping back. It's a question mark. I'm gonna say they're slightly worse.
That's kind of where I was surprisingly ending
Yeah.
up as well. I didn't
Yeah.
expect that because I really love that group in general. The Riley Mills part is a big question mark. I probably value Roy Robertson Harris more than most people. And like, I don't know, like Mike Morris has not taken the step yet. I would love Mike Morris to like demonstrate that he's taken the step, but he has not yet. And then the nose tackle situation.
Yeah.
I mean, Jonathan Hankins isn't getting better at 36 or whatever he is. And I actually have some hope. I want to see Brandon Peely in pads. And I think he might end up being a step forward from what they had from Jonathan Hankins last year and might take that spot. But we won't know until we get to pads in padded practices in camp. So I'm with you, though. Like Byron Murphy, I expect to be better. Is Leonard Williams going to be a defensive player of the year level player again? That's tough at his age it was tough for him to do it last year. I think he can. I don't think it's crazy, but is he going to be better? I don't think he's going to be better. Jaron Reed, I expect to be essentially the same. And so it's really kind of the depth that's giving me a little bit of pause there about the overall group.
Yeah, I think if Murphy takes a huge step forward, like sort of what Matabuke did, but he took until year 3, but it's really the second year of the McDonald defense. The thing I struggle with Murphy isn't the player himself. I actually heard a really good breakdown of him from Brett Coleman on his show where they said Murphy played a role that like most veterans can't play, and he did it super effective. And it's sort of what me and you said. It kind of gave credence to what me and you were saying, and I know you did a show on it. Like I thought Murphy was pretty impressive as a rookie, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm still looking at roles for moving forward. They don't. His issue was they didn't really have a nose tackle, and they still, unless Peely emerges, they still don't really have a nose tackle. And so is Murphy going to spend a lot of the year playing that spot again? When he played well, but that's not why they drafted him in the first round. They drafted him in the first round because he's supposed to be a disruptor, like Williams was. And so I'm still looking at roles, and I'm like, well, if he's going to play the same role as last year, how much better can he get? And that's where I say slightly worse. If they had like someone who projects in that Hankins role in the draft, and maybe that's where 1 pick or 2 picks got screwed, then, and look, it's not the worst thing to be slightly worse. Their defensive tackle group was ranked, I think, 2nd in the league by Mike Clay. Still a very good group, but I'm with you. Unless Murphy takes like a massive Quinnen Williams, Matabuke, they all jumped, I think, their 3rd year. And that's where I think Murphy's projects the way he looked last year. Yeah, maybe we're proven wrong here, but I'm not thrilled. The Robertson Harris thing is what really kind of plugged the hole because they didn't have anyone who could do that, and they never really replaced them. And even if Mills plays, who I do like, he's coming off an ACL, might not going to show up till midseason. I think he's pretty much a wash for year 1. I think he looks good in 2026.
Yeah, the 2 wild cards here are the young guys, Murphy and Mills. And I would throw Mike Morris into there. Maybe he or Brandon Peely. Those are all the guys that we don't really know what they're going to certainly do. Murphy, all on his own, Jeff, if he makes the jump that we're talking about, he'll make this group better, period.
Yeah.
Like, he makes that jump, this group's better. Don't know if that's going to happen. Various reasons for that. He's told me, he's told others, he's going to be playing more 3-tech. Adam Dirty told us he's going to be playing more 3-tech. More 3-tech for him means less 3-tech for Leonard Williams. So anyway, we'll have to just see how that all plays out. And then the depth, I mean, I think Riley Mills could be a really big upgrade. He could be a really good addition, but we don't know, and we don't know when. So it's just hard to say on July 12th that this group is better. So I think both of us say a little bit worse, and I think that's interesting, not what I expected. So then let's get to the edge group. Last year it was Derek Hall, Draymond Jones, Boye Mafe, and Trevis Gibson. For people that remember, Trevis Gibson, who was traded for from the Jags after the Seahawks had already traded away Darrell Taylor, and then they lost Uchenna Nwosu to an injury. So Uchenna Nwosu was part of this group last year, but he was injured at the end of the season. I mean, he was coming off an injury, so he wasn't playing full snaps. This year's edge group is DeMarcus Lawrence, Derek Hall, Boye Mafe, and expected to be Uchenna Nwosu, although we still don't know when he's coming back from the surgery he had, I think, in January. Other guys, I mean, Jared Ivey has a chance to make that team. Jamie Sheriff has been playing. Well, he's been playing off-ball linebacker.
Inside backer, edge.
Yeah, he's not playing edge. Anyway, ignore that. So let's stick with DeMarcus Lawrence, Derek Hall, whatever version of Uchenna Nwosu we think we're going to get. Boye Mafe as the top four against Derek Hall, Draymond Jones, Boye Mafe, and Trevis Gibson. Better or worse?
Better.
Yeah.
With the chance to be significantly better.
Yeah.
Draymond Jones didn't play terrible last year, but me and you identified him as a misfit as the day they hired McDonald. I thought they'd cut him. They weirdly they worked his contract around, and maybe they were excited. The front office was probably blaming the coaches for not using him right, but he never quite fit this defense. DeMarcus Lawrence, he's had a foot injury, and he has a very clear role, and he might be at every down base because of how good he is on run defense. And I think his role and how he can impact some of the young guys, I think it's going to have a domino effect. And now you can put out like a front with Murphy, Reed, Williams, and then have DeMarcus Lawrence on the edge. And Lawrence, we said in our show a couple weeks ago, he was a 90 rated PFF run defender 2 years ago when he was healthy. And the first 4 games he was healthy last year was really good. And so I think his fit in this defense, and we saw Clowney, who has like a similar skill set where he's like a better run player than pass rusher, what he did in this scheme. I think Lawrence, if he could be healthy, may not unleash him. He's not like the physical freak at this point, Clowney is. But I think you saw their size is very similar. They project really similar. The way people joke about you with Abe Lucas, like we can sort of make that joke with Nwosu. Like we really haven't seen him since 2022. He was hurt a lot of 23. Last year he got hurt with that play in the preseason, then got hurt again. We never really saw him. We haven't seen the player since 2022. He had to take a reduced contract. He's a wild card at this point. I have no idea what we're getting there. Again, it could be really good, but the good thing about how the group's built is they don't need him. They have 3 other good edge rushers. He's the 4th, and if he can play, I think he adds things that no one else can do. Some people think he's their best edge rusher at this point. I wouldn't go there. Projecting forward, I don't know what he is. And so I think Derek Hall took a big jump. I think Maffe's in a contract here. And last year, there's a very whiny group of Seahawks fans. There was a lot of whining going on about Darrell Taylor. And Darrell Taylor had like 2 sacks in the opener. He had his forced fumble, and there was like, oh, this guy Gibson stinks. They had all these injuries. Darrell Taylor ended up getting like benched halfway through the year. He didn't have a sack after week 2 and ended up signing like a 1-year, $2 million. He like the fact that they identified him as a misfit, they traded him, and now he's basically a fringe player. That there was so much energy spent on that, and it's like, who gives a shit? So I think they're definitely better with the chance to be significantly better.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think Boye Mafe is going to have a much bigger season than he had a year ago. I think that Derek Hall is going to have a step forward season from where he was a year ago. And I think part of it's just their progression, as younger players, Jeff, but part of it is DeMarcus Lawrence has already, he's already been working with Derek Hall, giving him a couple tips on this and that, and his ability to elevate both of those guys. Derek Hall, surprisingly, for a guy that was so powerful, struggled a little bit defending the run last year. So I think having a guy like DeMarcus Lawrence show him tricks of the trade's great. I'm assuming Uchenna Nwosu is going to play and be fine. If the Seahawks thought there was any reason to be worried about his health, they would have just cut him instead of renegotiated his deal. They did take some salary back, but they clearly think they still wouldn't be paying him what they're paying him if they didn't think they were going to get him for the season. So I'm assuming he's going to be back. I think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder, and he was the best edge for them when he was playing, all around player and a leader on that defense. So if you get close to a full season from Uchenna Nwosu, it's not even close, man, where this group is to where it was last year. I think this group is significantly better. Like, if the other defense tackle is a little bit worse, maybe, this one I think is significantly better. All right. Next, let's talk about off-ball linebackers. Last year, it was Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight as the starter, with Josh Ross, Drake Thomas, and Patty O'Connell as the backups. This is going to sound pretty familiar, Jeff, because this year it's Tyrese Knight and Ernest Jones as the starter, Drake Thomas, Josh Ross, and Patty O'Connell as the backups, although Jamie Sheriff is also competing there as well. So how do you decide whether this is better or worse? You just call it a push?
I think you call it a push. The only thing I think you could say better is Tyrese Knight's in the second year.
Mm-hmm.
And Tyrese Knight was a project-type player who was raw. I thought at the time when they put him in, it was a pretty big risk, considering the reputation on him was he was kind of this Tasmanian devil that was out of control, and he wasn't going to be able to handle the responsibilities of coverage that Jordan Brooks was so good at, and Cody Barton's gotten a lot of credit for over the years. And when they inserted him into the lineup, the thing that shocked me was just he looked like a professional.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought he would more look out of control. And McDonald, he really brought him along slowly. I think with a full offseason, with Ernest coming back, I think he's going to take a step forward. And we've seen that with other guys in this deal. Like KJ Wright had a kind of a offseason like that where he slowly worked his way in. And I don't think Tyrese Knight is KJ Wright by any means. Doesn't have that. But I think that's where you might say it's better, because with a full offseason in this defense, I think Ernest Jones had surgery. He might be better. He might be worse. The depth still scares the crap out of me, but that's not the question. The question is whether they're better or worse. I think they're going to be pretty much the same, but that would be the case that it might be better.
I think they are going to be, I want to say a lot better, but I'm going to say just better. I think Ernest Jones was not his best self, and he already was a big contributor. I think him having a contract, settled in this area, know he's not going to be traded, knows the defense now, knows the coaches, knows his teammates. I think he's going to have the type of season he had a couple years ago, where he was one of the best inside linebackers in all of football. I think Tyrese Knight, I mean, I don't know. We were joking on Real Hawk Talk about how much do you pay attention to Instagram and what people are posting on their stories. Every single Tyrese Knight post pretty much is him in a gym or him on a field. Like, that guy's grinding. And you could say, well, that's just what people put up there. Well, he's doing it every day. So, like, he's working during this time, and I just wonder. I wonder how much more he's got in him, and I think that there is more to, like, a lot more to give than what he had last year. And then the questions I've got is depth. Yeah. That I'm a little worried about. So I don't think the depth clearly has reason to think it will be a lot better, although they'll have another year in Mike McDonald's system. But I really think Tyrese Knight and Ernest Jones are going to be better than they were last year. So that's why I've got this as a solidly better group.
Yeah, and I saw a comment just come in that said lots of people were wrong about Tyrese Knight. I think that needs to be added, for sure. Because
I was wrong about him.
When he got drafted, like, basically the people I would consider the smartest Seahawks people, it's not taking knocks at anyone, were fuming about that pick. I didn't know much about him. I don't. The way I evaluate drafts is different than probably how Nathan evaluates drafts, where he really dives into film and he has takes based on what he sees. And I'm not saying I'm smarter than Nathan, because I didn't know much about this guy and I didn't like the pick either. But he looked like he seemed very raw and he could play. I think the thing that I think Griff talks about this a lot, and I give Griff a lot of credence on this, is he said they weren't great as a group at defending and play action and defending the middle of the field, even when they made the switch. There was still a hole in their defense. And I think if you want to make the case that it's going to be better, I think that's really important, that they need to get better at defending play action at the linebacker spot. And Ernest Jones being healthy, I think, does make a big difference. And you saw how he just completely transitioned that group, which was a disaster for the first 8 weeks of the year, and what that can do. So I think there is a pretty good case for them to get better. If they can get better at that, which can open up less bad plays on play action, better on first down, I think with a full off season with a healthier Ernest Jones, I'm with you on the depth. I think they're one injury away. I don't know who's next man up. Is that Drake Thomas? I would have liked them to spend a draft pick there or add a veteran somewhere in there. They seem one player short. Maybe they know something we don't know. But
Yeah.
that's the thing that still holds me back from saying that much better.
The one thing I could say is Mike McDonald specializes in linebackers. That's what he coached first. It's his first love. And if he's good with Josh Ross and Drake Thomas and Patty O'Connell, then I think I'm good. I can't quite get there because I haven't seen, like, I actually really liked what I saw from Drake Thomas in training camp last year when he finally came back. I was a little surprised he made the roster. And then, I just don't know that those guys have stood out the way I'd want them to stand out. So we'll see. We'll see about that depth. Let's talk about corners and then safeties, and then we'll talk about the overall group. So corners last year, starters were Josh Jobe, Reek Woolen, and Devin Witherspoon. Backups were Trey Brown, Nehemiah Pritchett were the backups last year. This year, you've got Kobe Bryant, Josh Jobe, Witherspoon as the starters, although I think we're going to have to figure out how we want to talk about Nicky Manwari. I think we're going to talk about him as a safety, but we'll leave it there for now. Nehemiah Pritchett, Demarion Williams, Shamar Jean Charles are the current backups. I would just say, Shaq Griffin. Excuse me. Shaq Griffin is on that list as well. It's possible in my mind that a guy like Isis Waxter or Zaya Alexander has a chance to jump a guy like Nehemiah Pritchett. But what do you think? Corner room, better or worse than last year?
Better. I think for a couple of reasons. I think one, Reek Woolen's in Reek Woolen, sorry, not Tariq, is in a contract year. I think he's going to play really, really well this year. I think Witherspoon in the second year in this defense, I think he was pretty good last year. I think he's got a chance to become great this year. There was flashes last year, but he did things no one else can do. I think Josh Jobe is going to be better this year. I know he was a surprise, and you've talked about how good he was at minicamp. I feel better about Shaq Griffin as the fourth corner than Trey Brown. Trey Brown has been up and down. He's been struggling with injuries. He's just given up too many penalties and plays. I think Shaq Griffin's a pretty good fourth corner. A lot of people didn't understand that trade. That signing. I absolutely got it. I think they're one outside corner away from being in a pretty shaky situation with Pritchett. You were very critical of Pritchett, what you saw last year. We saw in that even like the Jimmy Garoppolo Rams game, when one of their corners went out, like what they had to put on the field was scary. And like Jimmy Garoppolo was just throwing the ball. It was pretty sad what they looked at. And so I think having Griffin as your like fourth corner, and maybe if Jobe regresses, you can just throw Griffin in there. Griffin played for a pretty good defense last year. I think that's a really good fourth corner to have. I think that signing was imperative. And I think Jean Charles, I don't know much about him. I saw him do like a really cool interception. But I think he's a more interesting, even depth corner than what they had last year. And so the combination of more experience, the good coverage grades that Witherspoon and Woolen have, I think they're definitely better.
Yeah, I'm with you. I will throw in there, like, I am very curious about Isis Waxter. I know everyone's talking about Zaya Alexander, and I get it. I didn't see as much from Zaya Alexander, but Isis Waxter, his size, speed combination, and the fact that he played at Little Villanova that most people just don't know, to me gives there a better chance that he pops. So we'll see about that. But even without that happening, there are enough players on this list that I think push Nehemiah Pritchett off of it that makes me feel better. If it's pretty much, if it's Shaq Griffin and anybody, if it's Shamar Jean Charles, if it's Isis Waxter, if it's any of those guys, I'll feel more optimistic about them than what I've seen from Nehemiah Pritchett, who just honestly, he gets beat like constantly during practice, and I haven't seen that change that much when he was in regular season games. So they might see something in Pritchett that I don't, but I'm hopeful that this year he maybe will not be, someone that maybe he's on a practice squad if they really like him, but not on the actual roster. So I think that group's better. Let's do the safeties last here. It was last year. It was Julian Love, Kobe Bryant were the starters. Rayshawn Jenkins and Jarek Reed and Ty Okada were the backups. This year, it is Julian Love and Kobe Bryant as the starters, Nick Emanwari, Jarek Reed, and D'Anthony Bell. And I put Ty Okada on that list as well as the backups. How do you feel about this group, Jeff?
Well, Emanwari is the biggest wild card on this team this year.
Mm.
But I think even in like a scenario where they're easing him in and they're just putting up as specialized roles, I still think that's going to give you more than what Rayshon Jenkins did, who missed a lot of time. Emanwari is such a wild card for their entire team, what he can do, and he's such a unique talent, and they're going to use him as linebacker, they're going to use him as safety, they're going to use him as a blitzer. I think you have to say it's better. And they had some rough film from Jenkins and from Kayvon Wallace last year, and I don't even know if he was playing by the end of the year. And I think D'Anthony Bell is not a bad player either as like your fourth safety, and you still have some good depth there. And some of the criticisms we've had at defensive tackle and a linebacker is really the depth group. But I think Kobe Bryant too he's in a contract year. He's got a full year start. I think Emanwari, you are as high as anyone on him than anyone. I think what he could do to potentially turn this group into from like good to great. I think you have to say I don't think it's close to last year.
That's kind of my read. And Jeff, I did a show yesterday where I was looking at different like dime, nickel, base package kind of deployment for the Seahawks last year. And the Seahawks only played dime defense 8% of the time last year. But they had the third best EPA per pass when they were in that. They had their highest pressure rate when they were in that. But unfortunately, they were 29th in EPA per rush when they were in dime defense. And part of that was Rayshon Jenkins took some really bad angles, especially in the 49ers game. He just had some rough games last year. I like Rayshon Jenkins, but he really struggled last year. I think the hope is that Nick Emanwari allows them to play more dime. And I think that has the potential, you get this. I talked about it yesterday, but the Rams played the second most dime defense of any in the NFL. They played over a quarter of their snaps. Their pressure rate, almost 50% when they were in dime. They were actually more effective against the run than they were in some of their other packages. I think that there's a trend happening there because I saw the Chargers were another team and like another McDonald-related team that played it a lot. So I think Emanwari and his addition, the hope, and at this point you have to say it's a hope, is that it is a meaningful upgrade when you get a player that's the most athletic safety prospect in the history of the NFL, coached by Mike Macdonald in this group, and have him play a nickel. You can kind of call him a corner or you can call him a safety. Either way, I think from a secondary overall perspective, the Seahawks are better off now than they were a year ago. I also really like D'Anthony Bell. I really like Jarek Reed. And I don't think Ty Okada is a replacement level, like fine safety to have if you have to play him. You got a lot of depth in that group. So I think that group's definitely better. I also think Kobe Bryant, full year as a starter, that guy quietly was. I wouldn't be surprised if he's pushing honorable mention or top 10 safety list next year. He's a playmaker back there. And so I think that's another one that just, for me, makes this a meaningfully better group.
Yeah, and like you look at the list you just referred, and Kyle Hamilton's the number one guy on the list. Hamilton didn't really progress until he got around Mike Macdonald, and he was kind of a talent that they couldn't figure out. And they had that three safety set with Marcus Williams, who I think got released now that Macdonald is gone, and they were really good at safety those years in Baltimore. And so when Macdonald identifies this guy, and by all indications he did, I think you really got to give him the benefit of the doubt, especially what happened with Tyrese Knight last year. And I think if he went to the wrong team, him and Morey, we wouldn't know. But I think you have to have a lot of confidence in terms of what they can do, how they can grow, and the smarts of Julian Love. And I saw Quandre Diggs even the other day. I saw him shouting out Kobe Bryant as well. He thinks he's going to take a big step forward. I don't know if they're buddies or whatnot, but the safety group, again, we criticize some of the other groups for being lacking in depth. This is a really exciting. And then just identify, like they traded up. They probably had a first round grade on him. And I believe that if Zabel was gone, they would have taken him at 18. And that would have drove some people berserk. But that's how it's not a question of whether that's the pick or not. It's just that's how high I believe McDonald was on him. So he's the biggest wild card on the team. He's the biggest, I think, ceiling raiser other than anyone other than maybe Milrow. His athletic ability and his scheme fit and the way they can protect him with the players they have, it's just such an exciting. Their secondary in general. So I think Dominique Foxworth had them as the second best defense, their third best defense for this year, and it was mostly because of their secondary. So it's hard not to look at this team and be excited about what they can do year 2 in the system.
Well, that's a great point. And the Eamon piece, you got to look at other teams that are running this defense. You've got Baltimore with Kyle Hamilton. You've got the Chargers with Derwin James. You've got the Titans who drafted Kevin Winston, similar big you've got these other teams that are trying to find this big safety who can also cover, that allows the coach to call what the coverages that they want and disguises that they want. Eamon is the best athlete of all of them. Now, it doesn't mean he's the best player of all of them, but he's the best athlete. So now he's also teamed with what I think is the best coach, who I think is the best coach of all of them on the defensive side. I like the potential there. So, yeah, to me, if we zoom out, Jeff, and we say front seven, is it better or worse? I think we'd say better based off the edge and the off-ball linebacker. If we look at the secondary, I think we clearly say better. And so you get to the overall defense. I think one of the biggest things, I don't think it's as much about the personnel, although Eamon Murphy, there's a couple of guys that could take big jumps, Tyrese Knight. I think a lot of it's about what you said before. It is the second year in this system, and these guys are coming in knowing each other and knowing the system and knowing the coaches, and they already were good last year. So I think they're, even though there's a lot of the same names, I think they're going to be meaningfully better than they were a year ago.
Yeah, and I think, yes, it's a lot of the same names, but continuity is a big deal, especially on defense, where in this defense, where it is very incredibly different to what they're doing with Pete. And Pete really and his staff really just couldn't figure out a way to utilize these guys schematically. I know some people would challenge me on that, but their defenses just seemed broken by the end. And I think that's why he ultimately got fired. I think this team you saw, it's a far more, and I think the players talked about it in some of John Boyle's articles. I mean, you probably heard it. Is this last year they had so much to learn, and this year they're just playing. And now they can get more creative. I know Mike McDonald's told people he wants to blitz more, and I think when you combine the talent, it's going to be really, really interesting what they can do. And I think if you're optimistic about the Seahawks about anything, it's got to be the defense. Like even the biggest Seahawks hater would say. And now the biggest question, obviously, isn't the talent. It's how do they play against great teams? That's the area they really fell short last year. And I think for this team to get meaningfully better, that's a big measuring stick for them. Because what you saw them do to McVay and Shanahan, we haven't seen around here. And that's why McDonald was ultimately hired. There was a back-to-back where they just rolled through LA, San Francisco, Arizona defensively. They looked incredible in all 3 games. And compare that to the year before where Cooper Kupp's even talked about how they can just move people around to the level it was a joke, how easy they would get. And then you think of those games where Robert Woods would run the same play over and over and over. It's such an exciting time to be following this defense. So if you're not excited about this defense, I don't know where you're at and what your perspective is. But yeah, you look at the front 7, the back 7. Maybe you can question whether they're good enough at linebacker. I think that's fair. But man, there's a lot there, and it's just year 2. All their young guys are back. A lot of them are ascending. They had the right veterans, I think, with some exciting, not a ton of investment in the draft, but the wild card big safety, which we've seen. There's just a lot of optimism in that group.
Yeah, I think people underestimate the coaching aspect too. I mean, the coaches hadn't coached together. They're going to be, they have the continuity as well. And I see it. I see the chemistry when those guys are talking to each other. I see the chemistry when they're working with the players. It's just the familiarity, the continuity, I think is going to be huge. So yeah, I think, I guess, Jeff, it's kind of, I didn't know what we were going to find when we did this, because it's like, it's pretty much all the same guys. So like, is it really going to be a good conversation about whether it's better or worse? Other people can decide if that, but I enjoyed it because I do walk away feeling like, yeah, there's pretty like there's not a lot of places where I'm like, oh no, they took a step back. It is interesting. The one place where we said a little worse was defensive tackle. I didn't expect that going in, but I think it's fair. I also think it's totally possible that that could be one of the most improved positions if Byron Murphy pops, so like we won't know till we find out soon.
And an outsider probably looking at this roster and saying like, what's the strength of their team? Probably their defensive tackle group.
Right.
And so, yeah, Mike Clay had them, I think, second. Is that right? And so it's hard to get much better than that. That's why we're probably saying they're probably a little worse. But if we think about like the really young players that can really ascend, and media have talked about this for a while, the good versus great discussion on their team. Like you're not going to see a ton of Seahawks on these Jeremy Fowler lists. And I think Murphy's in the group that can really ascend. I think him and Worry can become on that list. Derek Hall and Mafe are just really interesting guys. I think they're in the pretty good but not great group right now. And so, but when you look at the talent as a collective, Baltimore was kind of saying they had 3 guys and then the whole group kind of worked together. There's no weaknesses really. And that for a defense is really exciting.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I know the players are. I think I definitely saw the swag building in the practices. So we will see. Jeff, thank you, man, so much for coming on the show. Great to have you with us. Have a good rest of your weekend, and we'll catch up next week.
All right, buddy. Have a good one.
All right, you too. All right, that was Jeff Simmons. And folks, if you haven't given the show a like and click subscribe, please do. I would appreciate it. Head on over to patreon.com/hawkblogger. We'll get you access to the ad-free audio version of this show, as well as our Discord channel. And you will also get to get verified over at hbtix.com, hbtix.com. You can buy full Seahawks season tickets there from other Seahawks fans, as well as individual game tickets for the 49ers game, for all the games that are coming. CJ Stroud, the Houston game, hundreds of tickets are up there. The whole reason it exists is so Seahawks fans can sell tickets to other Seahawks fans and protect our home field advantage. I get nothing out of it. There's no fees that I charge. I just want to facilitate Seahawks fans selling to other Seahawks fans, which by joining at patreon.com/hawkblogger, that gets you verified, because it's pretty unlikely that a scammer or a 49ers fan is going to start subscribing to my Patreon. So head over to patreon.com/hawkblogger, sign up, and be part of a really, really fun and friendly community. Everybody, have a great rest of your Saturday. I am Brian Emhauser. I'll be back with you probably tomorrow, as I often am, with the next episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care.